Hello, speaking is Ruth Kenner from my studio, Get Quilts Done, which is also the name of my channel. Today I'm going to talk about using the 97D foot to embellish. It was very surprising. Now I do have another video up there. It's going to be taken down and I'm using a lot of it, and the reason is I misnamed the foot. Which is a surprising thing because the 97D foot is an amazing foot. How could I make a mistake? It's what sold me on going to the dual feed and the 9mm, going up to that level of a machine if it was really worth it. It's great for piecing, but I was looking for a solution because I wanted to embellish yarn and I wanted to go down the middle because I wanted to be very sublime, very indiscreet. And I wanted it to be just very simple. You see it, and you have to have a lot of control to do that. So I started turning over my feet, something I do a lot, and I found a channel right in the middle of the 97D, and I saw that there is a little space, and I experimented with the machine, of course, and I found out that I can do a very slight zigzag, and the machine will tell you how far you can go. So I was in business and I was very surprised. And I love finding things out like that. And I wanted to apply the yarn like that because I'm going to put on top of it leaves and flowers and things like that. So I didn't want the yarn to take up too much or to make too much noise, as to say, to be too obvious, but I still wanted it to look really good. And the foot and my machine was up for the task. So let's get started and let's see what happened. Before we get started, I just wanted to show you a few things. This is how I've always embellished yarns. This is my twisted thread. You can see it zigzag. Sometimes I'll do a specialty stitch, but you see how the yarn is basically caught underneath the threads as I sewed? Well, I love that look. I'll continue to do it, but I was looking for something that would be more towards the center. And to start doing that, it looks more like a stem, and I liked it. Here I used a superior bottom line thread that you can't even see it. Here you can see it, and you can see the slight zigzag. That's the look I was going for, and that's why I was looking for a new foot to use, because when I'm doing that little tiny thread in there, I want it to stay in the middle. I went through my feet. I'm always looking to purchase more when I could afford them. And the bottom of the feet I also check because it's really important. And to get to the middle of the thread is quite a big thing. So I've always checked the bottom of my feet, and I checked this one, and there it is. There's a little canal, plus there's a little bit in the front. So I could really rely on this to keep it where it's supposed to be, so I can sew. And I was very surprised by that. And the other thing about this is, if you could see on the bottom, you see how it goes straight, but there's a little bit of a zigzag there, or a space that you could do a zigzag. So you can do a slight zigzag if I want to. I was surprised. The other thing I do like to show you, because for me, it's not only about the feet, it's how we interact with the sewing machine. All of the sewing machine and the other bits and pieces that really make a difference. I have chosen to sew with my 5.5mm stitch plate, and it's kind of scratched off, but it does have a little warning on it that it's not the 9mm. It did not come with that, but I purchased it for sewing because when I'm not doing the extra right decorative stitches and I don't want the narrow one hole, 0mm, I would like to use something in between. So I did purchase it, but if you don't have it, or if it's on back order and you've purchased it, or you just don't want to buy it, you can use, this is the 9mm, and you can see there's no red box above warning you. So you can use this if you want to. Here we go. As you can see, the foot is all set up, the stitch plate is in, and I would like to show you the other buttons because, like I say, it's how I interact. So the important button that I'm going to be using when I'm sewing is, see that little button with the scissors? I'm going to be pressing that, and I'm also going to show you how I make sure I set it up when we get to the screen. And of course, I always have speed control. I love that on this machine. Okay. And of course, we have the two knobs, and I am going to be playing, and you can see my reflection behind this, but I'm going to be using the top one for zigzag and the bottom one to control the length. Well, we're back at the screen. I cannot stress enough how important it is to get to know all the different functions on your screen. It has improved how I sew and how much I get done, and it's just been a real asset in my life in the studio. So let's get going with what I'm doing differently and how it works. I always start out and I make sure that this matches the stitch plate. More than anything else, I want to make sure that this matches. This isn't something that I want to forget or anything else. Now, in this time, because of the foot I have on, it really doesn't matter, but I want to make sure that it matches and have a good habit. Now, it does. It's highlighted in yellow. It's 5.5 millimeters, and you can see it, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how. I do it quite a bit because it's so important. So here we are on the 5.5. It's already in there, but if it was 9 millimeter, it would be there, and it's the default. That's why there's a little star, and then there's the 0. Of course, it is correct, and you can see it's in yellow, and that's so important. Everything else, if I find out I'm not doing it correctly while I'm sewing, I can go back in. All right. The other thing I make sure is that the needle, it goes down when I stop the sewing machine. That's where it is, except for when I'm chain piecing. It looks like that when it's up, and I want it down. Like I said, I learn really fast when that's not where I want it to be. The other thing, I'm going to go into settings and show you how to do it. It takes just less than a minute. I'm so quick now at this. I don't want you to think that it's a really big hassle every time you start sewing. It's just because I'm showing it to you. See the little setting buttons? It's like the inside of an old-fashioned clock. I just press that. I go to where there's the utility stitches and I press the oops, and because I'm on camera, of course, I make a mistake. So let me get back in, and I press right there, and I have now passed into the next stage where you have the hands going up to the little buttons. I press that, and I'm at a sewing machine. So there's two things. I'm going to show you first the something that I love. It's the hover foot. This is amazing, okay? This is where it is whenever I'm embellishing and whenever I'm sewing turns or anything else. You can see when the needle goes down, the foot hovers above. This gives me a place to work and to rearrange things. I absolutely love it. If I'm straight stitching, it's here. And if I'm using a lot of pins, which hardly ever happens, I do use the hover foot that it goes much higher up so I can get to the pins. But this is already here. The hover foot, when I'm using it, you'll see it is wonderful. Now I just go back out to here. And if you go back out, you just go back in. Like if you press X and you go out, then you just start over again. It's not a big deal. You go back in. Sometimes I do that. And you see that little scissors? That was the button I showed you before. I press on that, and of course I press the wrong button because it's on camera. There it is. So you have a lot of options here. You could turn that off and it just cuts the thread. Nothing happens. You can do this, and then it'll cut the threads, and it does 5 little stitches in place. Whenever I'm embellishing, that's what I'm using. When I'm doing seams and I'm going to be using this, or piecing of any type and I'm going to be using it, I use the 4 little buttons, 4 little stitches in a row. I can increase them up to 6 or go down all the way to 2. But I'm just going to leave that there. And of course I'm doing that. And I'm making sure that's set up the way I want. If it's not, I just go back in and fix it. It's not a security issue, unlike the stitch plate that you have to do. You don't want to forget to do it. So now I'm out. My hover foot is set up and I'm set to go. So where am I going? Of course, to my quilting section. Right here, I press that button. Okay, so of all the stitches, the straight stitches, even though I am going to use a zigzag, I'm not going to be using the 1, 3, 2, 5 that much. And so I know that. So I'm going to put it in there, and as you can see, it's already in the default where I want it. I'm going to show you how I did that. Okay, so I'm going to get into this and I'm going to get out. And I'm turning right now the zigzag, okay? And you're going to see what happens. See how it goes red? That's the machine, even though I haven't gotten the upgrade yet. It's something I really want. And it says it's 1D. The machine actually knows which foot I have on. And it does, because it will tell me once I get past 1.2, 1.3 that is, it goes to red and I cannot sew that. Really nice. So I know where I can go. So I've already experimented. I want it at 1.0. And now, of course, everything is the same for the straight stitch, for the stitch length. I know that I want it on 2.0. And I press this button, and on another video, and probably videos in the future, I press this button and now it's default. If I change anything like that, I could just press the delete, which I think it says clear. I don't know what it says, but the CLR button, and it goes back. And now I turn off the machine, I go to another foot, or do anything else. This is always going to be in there until I tell I want it to go back to the default stitch. That's a really good stitch for embellishing, just a straight stitch that I really enjoy using. But it's not what I want to use right now. So I'm just gonna get out of this, and here we go. We're set up now to stitch or to sew and to embellish on. The other thing that I might do, sometimes I do, is if I go in here, I'll keep this open when I'm sewing, and I'll start sewing with that on, and there'll be a little symbol here to tell me that I'm going to start sewing, and it's going to knot it at the beginning of the stitch. So let's get to the good part where I'm actually embellishing. Here we are at the important part, actually doing the work. You can see I have it set up. I'm not really worried about this side because it's going to be covered over. I'm putting on a frame. It's going to be a regular art quilt, so it's going to have a nice frame and things around it, so nobody will see it. But I do like to finish it off, so I have it set up that it'll do those tiny stitches that I showed you on the screen when it starts up, so it's locked in, and I'll show you how I lock it at the end. I'm also using this tweezers. This tweezers didn't come with my machine. It does come with some of the Berninas. I know it came with the Tulip Pink Special Edition, and I believe, I'm not sure, it comes with some of the 800s. Either way, I would recommend getting it. I use it all the time. You can see how the yarn fits beautifully right in here. So when I start to sew, you're going to see it just takes those tiny little stitches and then it begins. And it's a little bit more difficult to do because I've got this camera here. And I'm very careful to cover up those lines because this is an art quilted. It's not going to go through the wash. It's really important that I cover those up. And I just put them on so I know where to do it, where the needle, where I want the yarn to go through. And so I am just doing it, going along. You can see it's going in. Yeah, it just moves. The camera just moves slightly. Not so bad. So you could still see what's going on here. See how it covers up, and I don't want to pull it too tight, but I know it's going to fall in the middle of this of the yarn, and that's the exactness that I want, and that's so important. I'm going to show. Oh, and the foot goes up. I'm going to do that again so you can see when I have to get there. See how it goes up? That lets me maneuver things around. It is such a wonderful thing. I recommend going in and using the hover foot and see which one you like. See when you want to use it, and see when you don't, no matter what you're doing. If you're embellishing, sewing clothes, quilting, always take a look and make sure that the machine is set up in the way that you want it, not only in the default way. It makes such a big difference. See how the hover foot is helping me to do those turns and get it exact. Now I'm right at the end, and you can see the hover foot has come up, and at the beginning I talked about that button that I press, the one with the scissors. So that's going to happen right now, and I'm just going to go through and see if I can do it without my big hand getting in the way. And there it is. It's cut, and I could just move it along like that, and then I get to the edge and I trim it, because I'm going to be putting a wool felt flower over the edge, so it doesn't really matter. And I'll show you. I already put one on, the first one. There it is. So you can see what the edges look like. And it's done. Okay, that's it. I did it. I hacked the 97D foot, and I love the results, and the machine's accuracy also played a big part in it. There's nothing like having such precision machine that works beautifully. I hope you liked what you saw, and I hope that you learned something, and maybe it gave some ideas, serendipity that you can go on. In the future, I'm going to have I'm going to be teaching how I use my Bernina for binding and things like that. And I'm also going to, in the future, look to make a video about how I control the foot, because I really love doing it. And if you like it, of course, subscribe. There'll be I have a lot of other ideas. It just takes a long time to get there. But I really enjoy hacking things, and I really enjoy embellishing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And leave a comment. If you have something to say, I do try to answer people. All right. Thank you. Bye.